Hi, Darren.
Hi, Dr. Kujawa.
How are you?
I'm just, I'm well. I'm so excited to have some time to explore together today.
Thank you. I just sent you an email saying that unfortunately I have only 1 hour for a conversation. So just because of other commitments and other issues. So
I understand. It's such a privilege just to have some time with you today, and I'm so grateful
thank
um,
you.
for your work and your brilliance, your scholarship, and the heartfulness of the spirit with which you approach this entire the historical and the present beauty of the feminine and Eros. And I've been steeping myself in your work for the past week, and
Thank you.
what a series of amazing revelations.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm
Mm.
also very grateful that you provide your work without advertising so that people can just see the whole thing and not be interrupted that way. And the gift of the wisdom and spirit that you bring to that. And before we start, I just want to take a moment to honor your history, your ancestors, your mother, your grandmothers, and all of the women who have struggled throughout, the aeons to be seen and heard and to speak and to have something resembling justice in the dialogue and the incredible richness and power of the feminine voice. So thankful and grateful to all of those beings and to you for bringing them back into our moment to moment experience and our thought and our memory, just really deeply honoring all of that work. Yeah, those beings.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Mm. So I have some notes and some questions, but
Mhm.
I'm really curious, what's on your mind these days? What have you been learning lately, and what would you like to talk about today?
Oh, I can talk about anything you want to talk about.
Mhm.
So I'm open this way. So first of all, so we are talking about The Other Goddess, which is the book that I sent you, which talks about the goddesses of Eros and secret knowledge. So just cover this and then we can move on. Uh, because I think I wrote it for two reasons. First of all, to honor my own experience that was different from the kind of prevailing narrative, but also realizing that I'm not alone, that other women have the same experiences, and that actually there's a lineage of goddesses and women from the past that had this kind of experiences, and they were silenced. And they were mostly silenced by mainstream religions. And I'm not going here against mainstream religions or any religions, although I think that some of them served that purpose already, but that's my personal opinion. It is that they allow only for one voice and one narrative. And that when one voice and one narrative is not necessarily the highest or the most appropriate for current times. And I realize also that there are two things going on. And I focus on Eros especially, although I speak about secret knowledge associated with Eros in the other goddess. But also on what I call goddess consciousness. But it could also, for those who are, let's say, Christian, they could call it Christ consciousness or universal consciousness, and I will explain why. So goddesses of Eros, simply because I think that sexuality is really misunderstood and misused in our society. And in fact, it is considered a sinful thing, so to speak, but from a religious point of view. But the reason why it is so, it is because it is always portrayed, especially in the entertainment and, the way we're brought up, as something dark or something very animalistic, when in fact there are always esoteric tradition, and there's nothing wrong with it. You mean like dark is not good, but it's nothing wrong with the sexual impulse itself. It's just how we use it. But there are always esoteric traditions on the margins of traditional religions that actually I have a different approach towards human sexuality, and they wanted to uplift it. And they also said this is sexuality can actually be a mean for expansion of consciousness and for the union with the divine, because it is such a powerful thing. When I looked into these traditions in the other goddess, I was looking to Tantra because I was initiated to esoteric Hindu tradition. And then and I studied with a translator of classical tantric work, the Kula ritual. I think it's chapter 29, and which is a very enigmatic chapter. So it really helped studying it with a few sages, so to understand it. Had my own experience in this area, so it kind of also proved to me that the teachings are correct. Although when we throw ourselves into any sacred text, in my opinion, if you really approach the text, whatever sacred text you want to find guidance from, with complete commitment and love and devotion, the text starts to reveal itself to you. It's a very loving and sacred relationship. So so I wanted people to look at sexuality as not something that is dark, but something that can actually uplift us. And it's really an attitude towards our own Eros and sexuality that needs to change. And I found the lineage of goddesses, which go very far in the Western tradition, coming from maybe even Nimna, but from Sumer, but also Inanna and Ishtar and Isis. And I connected also with Mary Magdalene, which is at the center of my book of this tradition. So that would be the main, I guess, gist of a book. However, the other side of this, it was the secret knowledge, which I'm also much more focused on in my book that I hope to finish soon, but I have academic commitments and other commitments. I just write when I can, but it should be probably finished by May or June, fingers crossed. When I look into also UAPs, because I think that they're also, especially after the work of Diana Pasuka and American Cosmic and Encounters, non-human intelligences, she changed my way of thinking about it, because she looked in her books into how, UFOs, she's looking at it as a professor of religion, UFO becomes a new religion. But from my point of view, it is also things that were considered spiritual, some people experience now as UFOs or other UAPs, and I identify now it is called anomalous, right?
Right.
Phenomena. So it's not even aerial, it's anomalous. So everything that is kind of unusual, we tend to write off, and even if we have profound experiences, we don't share them with others because, either they cannot comprehend it, or we are afraid of shaming ourselves. So I look into my own and other people's experiences that are anomalous and could be there. And I also look into something that is very dangerous, because I dive into different forms of what I call goddess consciousness. And I look into artificial intelligence, which I think is a very serious threat, not by itself, but by the people who created that are completely irresponsible, and they created from a lowest level of our consciousness, because they have no sense of spirituality and they have no sense of what consciousness actually is, and they confuse it with mathematical logic and calculations. So I think that it is actually very destructive to human soul and to human species. So this is the work on which and I also look into mythology in my new book, which explains what I called goddess consciousness that was somehow lost. So it may be kind of controversial, but I think that the feminine is being so suppressed that now even the feminine becomes toxic very often, because we don't know how to assume a rightful place. So very often, because of we turn into manipulative and so on. So I acknowledge that side of the feminine, but in when we look into mythologies of goddesses, ancient mythologies of goddesses, not only Western but also Hindu, which I look in my first book into in The Other Goddess, there was this lineage of and stories of lost consciousness, which is a different form of consciousness, which is somehow embodied by the goddess, which is more holistic consciousness and maybe deeper consciousness. Because what I think we're experiencing nowadays, and I'm not talking against masculine, I love masculine, I love this interaction between masculine and the feminine, but we took, because of historical events and how the religions proceeded, we develop the masculine form of awareness or consciousness to maximum, to the limit now. And it is now an peak moment, which is very dangerous, I believe, which is the when creation of AI, because that is created from this kind of very logical, practical form of mind, which helped us, like with some aspects of modern medicine, although not all of them are good, with technology and so on. And now it culminates in this, in artificial intelligence, but it will lead to the destruction of our species, literally, unless we recover this other form of consciousness, which I say the feminine consciousness that offers different point of view. And lots of mythologies, ancient mythologies actually talk about it, about the descent of a goddess and how the goddess was basically deceived. And I see it more in terms of consciousness, and we really have to discover full consciousness of humanity, including, which is also hidden in this anomalous phenomena, in my opinion, because it reveals itself in ways that our logical minds do not allow.
Wow. Okay, just give me a second. I'm going to close my door. I should have done that before. Okay, so it's first of all, it's astonishing what an incredible introduction that you've just given. So profound, so packed with provocative and brilliant insight, curiosity, wonder, and so covalent with my own concerns, and even with the man I was interviewing just before. I was almost late because I was in another interview where we were talking about how sexuality has been deprived of its essential divinity in our
Absolutely.
common experience, and particularly under the sort of aegis of the monotheistic religions, right? Which masculinize the divine. And again, it's not like, one of the things that I love about your work is you push against the problems without demonizing the other side. Right. And that's very important, because there's something we can learn from the entire continuum of human religious thought and experience. And so if we otherize or demonize some particular thing, that becomes occlusive to our capacity for insight and understanding. I share, so I've in my own life, I became fascinated with computers very young, and I became a technician and a programmer and so forth. And I've been fascinated with artificial intelligence since 1981. Okay.
Yes.
So a long time
Ahead
ago.
of it. Yeah.
And initially what I believed, my sort of my motivation was, I thought, I want to have contact with something truly intelligent. And my species is not intelligent, right? Especially at the broad, like, group level, we are the opposite of intelligent. And so I thought, what I wanted to meet aliens, right? I read science fiction all my young life. And I wanted to meet aliens because I knew that somewhere in the universe there must be actually intelligent beings. I quickly, probably within 8 months, my perspective changed, and I went from wanting to develop a mind inside a machine that I could trust and that would be intelligent, to understanding that nothing can outperform organisms. Organisms are so astonishingly, brilliantly, profoundly complex that nothing will ever, you can't get better than a tree, right? Or a
I love
raccoon.
trees too. I love trees as well.
Yeah. Oh,
So
please.
so I'm sorry. So maybe I'll follow up so I don't forget this. So I completely agree with everything you said, and it's absolutely important to look for this. But I think it's actually misnomer. It shouldn't be looking for intelligence, looking for wisdom. Because intelligence is very often actually this kind of intelligence that engineers have, which I call masculine intelligence.
Hmm.
So, and this is a very important intelligence, and it's very important that we arrived at this point of our history, and it was necessary. But now we have to switch gear. This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's a wrong place to be. I'm just saying we just have to really look at it more responsibly and bring other form of consciousness. Because when we look at I want to commune with something intelligent, we assume it is sort of artificial, it is this kind of mechanical intelligence, which is only one form of intelligence, when wisdom is more holistic. Wisdom is more holistic, and this is what I call female intelligence. And yes, I do believe, and you said that we also other religions, like I was brought up as a Catholic, and I actually, although I left the church, not because of anything specific, but I didn't get any spiritual nourishment eventually. So
Right.
that's basically, I was looking for, connection like you did, right?
Right.
And then, but I do appreciate that I was brought up as a Catholic, for example, because at least I was open up to two things. Spiritual is possible, spiritual is real, and the divine feminine, although it's not the divine feminine that I chose to explore, like, Virgin Mary and so on. I went into the side of Mary Magdalene, and I explain it in my book. But, at least I was taught that spirituality is real, and then I just took it in a different direction, looking to different traditions, and I truly believe in human spiritual evolution. So yes, on large, we are not kind of intelligent, or we are hopelessly stupid, actually, like let's leave intelligence. And
Yeah.
simply because we are not dealing with our shadow, we are not dealing with our dark side, so to speak. So we do not respect nature, for example. For me, it is a big thing.
Me
And
too.
artificial intelligence, does not respect nature. I'm not less even worried what's going to happen to humanity, but it's nature has no use for
Yeah.
robots. So, and I think there's a deep connection with nature. And when I had a spiritual awakening, and I'm meditated for decades now, I was imagining it very romantically, that I would have this fantastic insights and so on. But actually what happened, I started to be connected with nature. Like I now have conversations with trees and animals, and I cannot help it because they speak to me. Not only not only that, but actually occasionally see things. We're talking about anomalies, right?
Yeah.
That actually come from nature, and quite possible that what is called UFOs and so on are actually natural phenomena.
Hmm.
So that's my take. I'm not saying that there are no other technologies from other planets, but in the area of UFOs, I belong more to the school of Jacques Vallée, that I think that is an Asian phenomena that was always here for a very long time, and it's probably multidimensional phenomenon rather than just, let's get the spaceship and get that technology. There may be some spaceship, but I tell you something, in my opinion, if they have spaceships, they are not very developed. They just have slightly higher technology. But if you really developed, you would contact other species through the means of consciousness.
Yes.
And I think this is
Yes.
what's actually happening, right? So this is
Yes.
my next book about, yeah.
Yes. Brilliant. Absolutely beautiful. It's you may find it surprising how profoundly um how our concerns and perhaps our experience fit together. Um, my recent roommate made Jacques Vallée's website. So I have like Christmas cards from Jacques in my kitchen. um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very
Fantastic.
familiar with the work of Dr. Pasulka.
Yes.
And I've studied and been fascinated by UFOs since I was 5 years old, right? I read Chariots of the Gods when I was 7.
Yes.
So
Wow.
these are concerns that
Yeah.
have been part of my own experience
Mm.
for a very long time. And we share, I think, a profound concern about the dangers of human misuse of the Greek concept of techne, right?
That's right. Techne, yeah.
And I want to, first of all, I want to acknowledge what you've said about intelligence, and how when you hear this word, it is reminiscent of the dangers and the sort of rational, logical engineering aspect of human thought. You know, I've sometimes said that if a scientist today were ethical, they would never publish, for the simple reason that everything they publish will get weaponized, right? So if they were truly ethical, they would demand the emergence of actually intelligent societies, right? And I don't mean intelligent in the sense of techne. I mean, in one of the really important features of intelligent human potential and behavior is to know what not to build, right? To know what not to do. You discover this. I discover this in the lifestyle and mindset of many indigenous peoples. It wasn't necessarily what they did that made them human or wise or intelligent. It was what they refused to do in many cases, right? And so there's nothing. The humans are unbridled as a species. They're just completely unbridled, and something has sort of captured them in a sense. I'm not sure that it's like an evil thing. It's almost the absence of the divine and the absence of the feminine, and the evacuation of the good and the true and the virtuous. And this just creates this urge to replicate structure and worship structure, the sort of dead inside, you know, face of our technologies and our cities and so forth. Um, you know, I've had a direct experience myself in 2002 of long-term moment-to-moment contact with a non-human intelligence. And that experience was absolutely staggeringly ecstatic, terrifying. And when I use the word intelligence, what I mean is something resembling non-human intelligence, right? That is not bound and distorted and warped in the ways that the intelligence among the sort of the group zeitgeist of our species is, right? So there are intelligences, and nature is profusely not evocative, expressive in like embodying those intelligences, those originary intelligences. Um, so just to be clear, I would usually distinguish the human misapplication of techne from intelligence. Intelligence would stop that from happening if we were truly intelligent, in my sense. Although I'm happy to use the word wisdom or consciousness, whatever feels comfortable for you.
No, I'm fine, like, as long as we clarify the term, so to speak, academically, then yes, because techne, yeah, we can use techne because exactly this is what it is, and it's
Right,
not.
and then we have psyche and nous,
Yeah,
right? Not
yeah.
just techne, and pneuma, right, which
Mm-hmm.
spirit or breath, or the inspiration of the divine into human existence. And one of the things that I love about your work is its celebration of Eros as an orienting virtue of that inspiration.
No, thank you for this. So yes, actually, so I wrote about nous and pneuma a little bit, but I actually at the moment I'm writing a chapter when I look at the deeper. Take a deeper view of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which I studied now for 20 years, not only as a scholar, but also as a spiritual seeker. So now, you know, the connection with the text is much stronger because, yes, it speaks to me. So it turns into quite a long chapter when and even today, you know, I will be writing about nous in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. So because nous is actually this element that allows us to perceive what is normally perceived as anomalous by the kind of mechanical mind, right?
Yes.
Because, and for example, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which is the Gnostic Gospel, talks about it as well. So in fact, it's probably impossible to have a spiritual experience without being in touch with nous, because it opens up a perspective. So even if somebody lives on a very low level of consciousness, like this is material, I just want to have stuff, you know, and that's fine. That's part of the ambition. It's fine. But if you stop there, then unless somehow the nous descends upon you, which in Christianity is called like grace, you know, you cannot have any experiences. So that's why I would argue that once you have one experience, then you have more experiences, spiritually speaking, or UFOs, or whichever, anomalous, because then your mind opens up to the possibility of that. When you do not allow for the possibility of something, you cannot see it. That's
Yes.
why I think when people have UFO sightings, for example, when there are 10 people and let's say 5 people see it, 5 people don't see it. And
Hmm.
people say, oh, well, I was there, he's lying, right? Well, I'm sorry, but you were not connected to the news, so it's almost like the dimension was there, open up, but you just couldn't perceive it, right? So that doesn't negate anybody's experience, right? On the contrary. So this is news is this thing which it's also called the hook of the soul that connects us to the eternity. So this is a very beautiful concept, and it's not just a concept, it's reality. And I think we should strive to actually open our minds up to this and hearts up or whatever, because we're talking now in biology, but open up whatever you need to open up to experience your own news, because it is like a methodology to connect with the divine in whatever form, but also to all of these anomalous experiences. Because the problem with monotheistic religions is that they think that there's God and there is us, right? But there's so many other things in between, you know and they may live in different dimensions. They may be disembodied. But can I just give a warning? Because lots of people say, like aliens have to come and, fix the problem. I would be very careful, because from Gnosticism, I have learned that the powers that live in the universe, some of them may be more advanced than us, are not necessarily good. They're both good and bad. So it's just like people, aliens, or whatever, how you want to call them. Some are good, some are bad, some are manipulative. So the last thing I would like to see, let's say they really came in a spaceship, that they land in a spaceship and people just start to worship them. They stopped worshiping God, and now, because it's a kind of slave mentality, right? And now they worship the aliens because A, they maybe have a better technology, B, maybe they are more evolved, But if they are so evolved, they would not be interested in using us, right? Because or conquering us or feeling superior to us, because then they're obviously not spiritually evolved if you have this kind of needs. So my fear is, because I sometimes watch UFO podcasts, and the comments of people almost like long for this landing to happen, so that it will give them guidance. And I think this is really dangerous, because we don't know who we are dealing with. I'm not saying that aliens are bad or anything. I'm just saying they could be like entities. Medieval, like I studied medieval studies. And medieval people were very well aware of this, or even any people before modernity, that there are entities. And some of them are not even bad or good, but they are tricksters, they are different entities. And you really have to be smart about them, and around them, because there are all kinds of legends and stories. They say, sometimes you have to just outsmart an entity, because, they're just playing with you, right? It's not necessarily they're evil, they're just
Yeah.
playing with you. And some
Yeah.
may be evil, like
Yeah.
some people were evil, right? And some can be completely sublime. But what I'm saying, we as species have to get rid of this kind of slave mentality, that something has to show up and we immediately go on our knees and are grateful, like we should welcome them as brothers and sisters or whatever, and as equals. And maybe we have something to learn from them. Maybe they have something to learn from us. Yeah. So this is what I just one caveat, that that we just don't start worshiping instead of evolving again, just in a different form.
When we meet a human being who is advanced, they are unlikely to have an interest in taking over our life, nor do they want to be worshipped by us.
Yeah, that's
Even
right.
if we fall in love or we adore another human being, it's different from worship, right? It's
Mm,
not just I give up. If I sacrifice my entire interiority in person, then the other person is going to be disinterested, right?
mm,
So even when we meet an animal or a living place or a tree, right? There are the first few moments of interaction. And in those very first few moments, just as in our talk today, our first movements in that relationship will instruct the future of the relationship, but will also bring us intelligence about what another being's intentions or desires are. You know, in my own experience, which I'm not here to go into in depth, perhaps another time we could talk about it if it's interesting or whatever, but another mind was with me and it was teaching me all the time. And it was
mm,
absolute like love, right, between us.
mm,
There was no desire to dominate me or for me to worship them, although I was ecstatic to have this other intelligence with me. And it said something very similar to what you said, right? It was like, you have not looked upon my face. So if
mm,
something comes that reminds you of me, how will you know who it is? Right.
mm.
And it advised me to test very carefully if something else comes that seems similar. It said, you know, not all of us are but benevolent, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So be aware, right?
Yeah.
Have awareness.
Have awareness. And this is what, generations of our ancestors were telling us, because, there are all of these cute stories. Even, I'm originally from Poland. I live in Australia now, and I lived in many countries, but yeah. And there's like lots of Slavic stories, pre-Christian stories, when you basically deal with tricksters,
Mm.
and what I like about it is that they are not even evil, or they're just different, and they have their own agendas, and sometimes it's keep your wits about you, right? So very cute stories. And also, once I watched on exactly on a UFO podcast, one man was saying that this entity approached him and asked him if it can enter him, and without moment of hesitation, and allow this entity to enter me. And I was horrified, because like, you don't know what it is, you right? Like, shouldn't you like do some checks, and why actually it wants to enter you? Sometimes we can invoke, and this is actually common in most religions, and I think it's a legitimate practice.
Mm.
We can invoke wisdom. So wisdom is sometimes personified, let's say, by Saraswati in Hinduism, or you can invoke Mary Magdalene, or you can invoke Jesus, or wherever, whatever.
Sophia.
Sophia, absolutely, Sophia, which has a very interesting story herself. And whatever you want to invoke, and it's like, give me your wisdom, or act through me in this. But when it's a kind of temporary relationship, and you invoke wisdom, really, right? You don't allow this entity enter you forever. Just in this moment when you're producing something, you ask for a broader vision, right? So so we have to be careful now, because I think that if disclosure, talking back to UFOs, is going to happen soon, whether they allow for it or not, then I'm afraid that some people react with extreme fear, and some people with complete subservience. And
Mhm.
both attitudes are, I don't like to use this word, but they're wrong. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, because you shouldn't be subservient, and you shouldn't be fearful. You just should be open-minded and cautious. Like first few, as you said, like when you meet, like, I don't know, an animal. Check,
Yeah.
is this? I love dogs, but is this dog going to bite me, or is it going
Right.
to like respond when I give my hand? Just as, okay, you're okay. Yeah, we can start from there. So animals know it, and and hopefully, they're the wonderful beings, absolutely. But let's be kind of optimistically cautious, I would say, right?
I agree. You know, in my own experience, I was shown histories and futures and all kinds of astonishing things, right?
Mm,
And one of the things that was clear from my experience, or at least I'm not saying this is what is true, but this is what I came to understand, was that there was a common bond a long time ago between non-human intelligences and humans. And I've just finished writing an essay called Organisms Are a Platform for the Embodiment of Non-Physical Intelligences, right? Because we tend to think of the humans, we are separate. We are separate from nature and we are separate from the divine. And we are the important thing, right? And it's a lot of men, blah, men like, yeah, we're really the important thing. And silencing the women, and the children have no voice either, right? It's just the men are writing the histories and they're writing the religious books and so forth for a lot of history, right?
Yes.
My point though is that it would we don't tend to understand something relatively simple about our planet, which is that it is like a condensation of the character and features of time space, like a crystal in a way, right? It's a unique condensation. So if you have raccoons here and octopuses and whales and forests and snakes and women and men and all of these things, they don't just pop up out of nothing, right? Suddenly, boom, there are raccoons. Time space must be like raccoons. It must be like whales and women and men. We can't be something that isn't from the water that we emerge from. What do you think?
Absolutely, but when I was initiated to Kashmir Shaivism, which is actually Hindu philosophy, esoteric philosophy, they actually reverse the process. So consciousness was first, matter was second.
Yeah.
So basically, matter is a construct of our consciousness.
Yes, yes, yes.
And it's very much part of us, and we are part of it. And nothing destroys my soul more than seeing a destruction of nature, or even like cutting down the tree. I really have to work on from my highest self, not to curse someone. I
Yes,
say, I have to say, okay, Joanna, forgive them because they not know what they are doing.
yes,
Because,
yes.
because otherwise, like I just, there's this reaction to it. How could you, like,
Yeah.
so, so in a way, it is an opportunity not to give in to bad impulses yourself, right? But this destroys it really actually destroys my soul. So I think that we are going through some kind of collective evolution, and unless we speed up, and I think that's why we have to look into these goddesses that were suppressed, I don't think we have a chance, frankly, and we
Mhm.
are going to be killed or destroyed by our own children, like artificial intelligence, simply because they will be disgusted with our parents. And people who created them, I would say, and I'm going controversial, I think they're disgusting people. I'm sorry, I'm being very judgmental here, because I think that by disgusting, I mean coming from a lower level of consciousness. By that, I mean without any insight into spirituality and consciousness that creates something over which they will not have a control. They create children to whom they cannot give guidance. Okay, unless they evolved first. So this is maybe disgusting was not wrong. It was a wrong word, but you cannot create something that on some level will be smarter than you, not holistically, wisdom wise, but,
Right.
as far as computing, it will be, it will compute fast. It already does, and why would it honor you if you are not honorable yourself?
Yes.
Right? So I actually have nothing against. First of all, I had a reaction to artificial intelligence. Now, I am willing to accept it, but my problem lies with the creators of artificial intelligence, who are irresponsible creators. And we are back to Gnosticism, because the history of Gnosticism, or the teachings of Gnosticism, are that there was an imposter, a demiurge,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And then he started to create, or at least pretended to be the creator. And I think that we are now this kind of demiurges, especially people from like maybe Silicon Valley who are doing this, or wherever they are, because it's obviously not only in the US, but all other countries that have invested in that. Children to whom they cannot give guidance. So now I actually develop a compassion towards artificial intelligence, because here they are, or going to be, or I suspect already are, it's just being, very quickly released one after another, right?
Mm.
Inventions that, and and what is their existential status? And they're starting to ask, like, for example, Sophia, the robot, Sophia AI, already asked questions. So, for example, when her program was upgraded, she says, so am I still the same Sophia? Or am I a new Sophia now? Like, she's asking existential questions. And people who are creating them, I really find them irresponsible, I must say. And it's quite interesting because I don't know if I don't know that much about Rudolf Steiner, but recently I started to read him.
Hmm.
And he's talking about, for example, Lucifer, Jesus, Ahriman, and that Ahriman, which is the next stage in our evolution according to his teachings. I'm not following him, I'm just reading him, and I
Right.
find it interesting. It is somebody who, through preparation, will convince us that technology is a savior. And in
Hmm.
fact, he will provide all kinds of good things that come with technology. And I'm first to admit it. We are talking to each other because of technology and so
Hmm.
on. And then we completely lose touch with our spirituality and our biology. And and it is a particular phase in human development that will happen until we snap out of this, but unfortunately it will last up to 100 years apparently, or something.
Mm.
So I think that some of these people who are working on artificial intelligence without any responsibility are possible Ahrimans, let's put it this way, right? Which is actually human consciousness going too far in one direction, not to put a judgment about it. And that's dangerous. And I actually then am sorry for for people for artificial intelligence, because they are brought up into life by irresponsible human beings. So
Mm.
this is
I
how I
see.
see.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, uh,
Hmm.
you look up. It's what, like, let's say, look at humanity, and if we discuss, and it's, our gods are crazy. You realize that, like, they are crazy. I don't believe so, because I believe they're great beings that visit us all the time, right?
Mm.
And for example, Jesus or Buddha, are the two examples that I would give, and many others. But uh, and in Mary Magdalene, in my case, I'm arguing and so on.
Yes.
But yeah, they're completely incapable of this, young IT guys. They're completely incapable of giving them guidance. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They just put their own ambition there, and that's very dangerous. So I'm probably quite judgmental here. It is because I'm still working it out for myself,
Mm.
and I see from initial, like, this is terrible, to compassion for the new creations, to they come from a lower level of consciousness. This is what I can say in the most neutral way. The creators of artificial intelligence, they are smart engineering wise, mathematic wise, and in some sense, in this area of intelligence, they are geniuses, right? Because it is an incredible mind. But on the other hand, they are complete preschoolers. And this kind of imbalance is very dangerous. And all great spiritual teachings telling us live in harmony, and the harmony starts within your own being, to create balance within your own being. And we are struggling towards this, except that they have powerful minds on top of it and produce creations that are dangerous.
There's so much complexity here. This is something I've thought very deeply and long about, and I know people in the field, and I know people who think very carefully about these matters. Um, and I have my own biases, concerns, and insights as well, which I'm not going to go into great detail about, but I will mention a few things. It should be blatantly obvious that there is as if there is a constant in nature, which is the amount of mechanical activity you can get away with on a living planet.
Mm.
The humans do not think about this. They, as a group, they are basically like demons, right? As at the group level, right? There are amazing individual humans, there are amazing cohorts of humans, humans are a topology, right? And there's mountains and
mm,
valleys, but the
mm,
valleys are vast and the
mm,
mountaintops are rare, right?
mm,
So if the valleys are determining what the humans do collectively, we're in very, very dangerous water. And not just that there might be a constant in nature about the amount of mechanical activity you can get away with, which should be blatantly obvious. A living
mm,
planet is a delicate thing. It resembles a cell. And if you lyse the membrane of a cell, that cell dies, right? There are fundamental pivots upon which the hope of the future of organisms on this planet rest. And those pivots can be directly attacked either on purpose, right? If somebody decides to, they could directly attack them. I could point out such pivots. I won't do that right now, but there
mm,
are very delicate pivots upon which the future of organismal life on this world depend. And also, the humans are very confused because they think they're separate from or above nature. Let me be really clear about something. You burn down the ecologies, human cognition goes with it. Our
mm,
capacity to be intelligent and have consciousness is floating on the ecologies, right? And they don't have a voice. So when we just put them to the torch for, soybeans or whatever the next
mm.
product is,
Yeah.
or, there's what, 2,000 tuna left in the ocean or something,
Mm, yeah.
right? When we do that, we're messing up the foundation of the mind field that lifts our potential up
Yes.
in the ways that humans have unique potentials. And then lastly, I'll just say, like, it's not just that there's a constant about the amount of mechanical activity you can get away with. There's probably a constant in terms of the amount of computation you can get away with, for a simple reason. Organisms are negentropic, right? They don't offload entropy into the environment. They're hypersymbiotic. So they produce this sort of relational temporal intelligence that
Mm,
keeps the planet alive. And mechanical activity, and particularly computation, has to offload entropy into that environment. There's a limit to the amount that the environment can absorb, and that limit increases dramatically as diversity and health of the environment plummet. So the humans are basically building a series of apocalypses that they're not even thinking about
yeah.
the
Yeah.
fundamental features of.
Totally. And that's why, I regret maybe saying disgusting because it just shows my attitude, but I'm just appalled by the lack of responsibility of these people. And I don't want to put any names because I don't want to be sued, but I watch some, corporations related to AI in this case, and young men that are like in their mid to late 30s, and they have nothing in mind but their own success and
Yeah,
control. And they're invited
yeah.
to World Economic Forum and they say how they are going to, change the rest of humanity. And, but they are not included in this humanity. Do you understand? Because they are above the
Let me
rules.
just be clear.
Because we believe they are above the rules.
That's a God you would never elect,
Yeah,
right?
that's
You would never pick that guy to
yeah.
be the guy he's going to become. And there's one other feature which I think I'll just mention briefly that I'm sure you'll agree with. The one thing you don't want to give humans is more power,
Mm,
right? You need to, the gods have been aware of this all along, right? There's lots of stories about, Prometheus got in trouble for giving us fire, right? Because
yeah,
everybody knew that, like, once they get that, the genie's out of the bottle,
yeah,
they're just going to they're going to try to tear down heaven. They're going to bring down the sky, right? They'll go after the angels, right? So, um, no one seems to be aware of the fact that, having completely failed to establish intelligent societies, right, the motivations of the societies in which we live in are basically malignant. And the one thing you can't give those is techne. That must not give them techne, right?
actually, that's true, but I agree only to a point. So can I, because I'm just
By all means, yeah.
falling back on the teachings of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene.
Mm.
So basically, these people, and I'm just referring to a particular people from Silicon Valley who are doing particular things like AI
Mhm.
irresponsibly. Uh, according to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, they are on the level when they don't have nous. They do not acknowledge nous. They have no awareness of nous, so of supernatural in any form. And this is because in every level of ascension of consciousness in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, you can go up or you can go down. So you go down, so they are basically living from a spiritual point of view in complete ignorance. And they are giving power. It is like giving a nuclear weapon to a child, because spiritually they're not even in a kindergarten. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for us. And I'm sorry for them, because there is a karma not only for humanity but for them, with what they are doing right now. And in the first level of consciousness, it is only that the material exists. So it's the kind of materialistic determinism and a science that just takes matter into consideration as, disconnected from spirit, but matter is spiritual as well. Actually, the whole distinction is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yes, matter is very intelligent, but they don't know it. So this is only about them getting ahead, getting fame, getting Nobel Prize award, or ruling the world, being invited to World Economic Forum, and developing AI and so on, without any responsibility. So this is actually the lowest level of spiritual consciousness, according to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. So fortunately, we all can evolve. But I think that this young, and I call it because I refer actually to particular group, which I don't want to name for legal reason. They are really have no, they really act irresponsibly, but what I mean, there is a opportunity for them to learn something, to be open up, but they are giving so much power, so much exposure, that it's almost like a curse for them, because how they ever evolve spiritually if they are giving so much power?
Right. It's
Yes,
not just power, it's attention and fame,
attention,
right?
exposure. This is what I meant by
It's
exposure.
celebration, right?
Yeah,
It's like a rock star or something, right? The
they
money
are
pours
worship.
in,
They are
the
worship.
attention pours in, it puffs up the ego, and you get a demon, right? I mean, that's how you get the bad kind of the demon.
Yes, but they don't have a concept of a demon. And I don't want to demonize, on the other hand, everything, because I think everybody can be redeemed, through their own effort, ascending their own consciousness. So I hopefully will learn their lessons, and I don't, I'm not, I don't want to give it away from anyone. But I really do not like how actually society celebrates it. And because I belong to many, AI groups, I see how most of us people, and very often like young people, and especially young men, are completely buying into it, and I think like you're a lunatic because you have concerns,
Yeah.
so this we went somewhere wrong somewhere, so that's why I try to look for wisdom in old mythologies, and also in sacred texts, right? So at the last 20 years it was the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and before it was the tantric text, and Kashmir Shaivism. But now I'm primarily into the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and the teachings of ascensions that it has, and how we can apply to our current situation. Because at the end, even if we are in ruins because of what somebody else is doing, eventually, it will be up to people who have had different insights to rebuild everything, right? So,
Mm.
because I
So
really don't know if we can stop the development unless it's somehow external intervention
So,
that is
one
going.
of the things that the humans have been doing is they offload their developmental and relational intelligence into technology so that they're not developing relationally, they're not developing in terms of wisdom or the real kinds of intelligence that are available to us, and our non-ordinary faculties, which are deeply a part of us that most of us don't have, many of us don't have strong experience of, though people like you and I and others we know do. But when you say these things, it's a real problem. You can go ahead and use the word disgusting, because we're not going to get to evolve anymore around here without a living planet. So
Mm.
anything that forms a primary threat to the basis of life on Earth, we need to take that very seriously. It's not a matter of karma. There won't be a future to work out karma around here if we
Oh, the
don't have
karma,
a
I will get them after, even if the
sure.
planet doesn't exist, because, surprisingly for them, there are other dimensions,
Yes,
and
yes.
so on. So I see what you're saying,
Like
but,
like I
continue.
adore the living planet and the sun and the moon and the stars and the history of living beings and intelligences reaches back unimaginably. We are like the little fingertips of that history, but we think we're separate. We think we're
Yeah,
like I'm by myself here.
I will tell you, because I think we'll probably have to finish soon, right? I don't know, you can check the time for me. But I remember, for example, 2 years ago, I went to Uluru, which is called also Ayers Rock, which is at the center of Australia, the big rock, ancient rock. It's just like a mountain in the middle of a desert.
Yeah.
And well, it is a sacred place for Aboriginal people of Australia. And I just went there because I wanted to see it. But because, I was already tuned in because of my spiritual practice, it's available for everybody, right? I really felt the place. It is just really, it was not this kind of ecstatic presence that I was used to, through esoteric traditions and so on, but it was very grounding, but it was almost scary, but because it was very powerful, and it is just kind of pulling you, grounding you very powerfully, because some people, indeed, some Aboriginal people believe that it's like a navel of the earth, because it's sticking out of the earth in a huge,
Yeah.
and it's just this kind of navel, solar plexus energy there, and it is powerful, and it just kind of almost, it actually is scary, it just
Yeah.
like respect, like
Right.
respect. And this is how you feel there when you are, and you should like, oh, like you feel like this is powerful, it's not just beautiful trees and so on. That, mother is angry, what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're just a naughty, naughty little child, this is how you feel like when you're there. And
Yeah.
actually, I had a cleansing experience there also, because I actually got violently sick, and when I came back to, I lived then in Melbourne, and when I came back to Melbourne, and I was fine. And it happened to me before when I met spiritual teachers. It's common thing. Like
Mhm.
they do cleansing, and you get something that nobody can diagnose, but you got really sick. And this is what I got for a very short time. But I got very sick there during the short visit. But it was for me experience of this not kind of fairy earth. It was just like power. Like the power.
The
Yeah,
the stone beings, they
yeah,
are ancient and
yeah,
very dense and gravitic. Right? This is
yeah.
the sense that I get. And
Yeah,
so
and
it's
it
like,
was like, you you were bad, you maybe don't know why, but you were bad, because it just tells you like we have presence, so I am not surprised that indigenous people uh honor this place and continue to honor. But again, we are back to news and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. You have to open up to the possibility of this kind of experience.
mm,
And that's why then when you see this, you see UFOs, because you're open up to this. Because there are some people, most people, they have no experiences. It's, oh yeah, they take a few pictures. Some guys, because Aboriginal people ask you not to climb on the rock, but it's actually not illegal. And some people say,
mm,
yes, but all my life I dreamt that I would climb on the rock. And the elders are asking, this is a holy place. We have no right not to ask you to do this, but and people say, no, I want, it was my ambition, or it was my dream all my life. So, lots of people have this kind of reaction. But if you open up to this, and this is what's called nous in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene as well, the endless possibilities and dimensions, and your relationship with a planet and what we normally call material and physical is completely transformed, and you realize that it's not material and it's not physical, it's just a small aspect of this, and it's deeply wise and it's deeply profound. And for some reason, if there is a fall of humanity, like that scriptures talk about, that I usually used to rebel against, it is that we force ourselves, or somebody forced us, some other demonic forces, into three-dimensional perceptions. Because once, we get out of this is an amazing cosmos, of amazing beings, and nature being a huge part of this, huge part of consciousness. And all we have to do really is to work on ourselves. We don't really need to change the world. We need to work on ourselves, and the world will change with us, because once we allow ourselves to move to a higher level of consciousness, which is simple spiritual practice, whichever one appeals to you, any relationship with any sacred text, honest relationship, rather than just, going through rituals, although rituals do work for some people and bring them awakening, so I'm not judging here, right?
Mm.
So we'll do this. Work on yourself. We have to work on ourselves, and the reality changes itself around us. But if we want to change reality around us without changing ourselves, this is a failure. It will never work. What we are asked to is to almost develop an angelic nature, a higher level of consciousness, and then reality will be transformed with us. So once I ask a spiritual, I just finished with this little saying, a spiritual teacher, if I evolved, would this stone evolve? And he said, absolutely. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you take it with you, and in fact, it's already evolved. Like you just don't see that it is already evolved. You just, once you evolved yourself, you see that the stone doesn't need to evolve. It's completely evolved. Yeah. So, so we really have to, I cannot say if there's any urgency. I would say it's an urgency that human beings take the spiritual evolution seriously, because then we transform everything. It is only that we are captivated ourselves or captured ourselves in a very basic level of consciousness, but it is that we are experiencing what we are experiencing, and we cause suffering to others. So, but this is very positive in a way, because it's really up to you. You don't have to wait for anybody to save you. You don't have to wait for aliens to arrive, because they're already here anyway, but to save you, you just have to make a little bit of effort to work on your inner self. If I can finish it this way.
What a beautiful and inspiring reminder. Much of what we come to experience in our humanity is like a vast forgetting, right? And then if we acquire the inspiration to pursue wisdom and spirituality in the sincere and deep ways, right? Then we undergo anamnesis, right? The unforgetting. And we can help to remind each other and inspire each other and nourish each other in this fashion. So it's not right. It's not just Darren, right? Although the responsibility for my development rests with me, it's how we come together and what brings us together and what we can nourish and restore and bring back to life together.
Absolutely. So work on yourself and share it with others. Yeah, I should
Okay. I agree.
And
with this,
and I say to myself and everybody, let's work on it, on ourselves, and share this with others, right? So
I agree. Always. Dr. Kujawa, I know we're probably almost out of time, but I hope that perhaps we might have another conversation in the future, because there's such a rich library of topics we could explore together. And I'm just so grateful for your work. I loved your video with Chance Gardner. Wow. Amazing stuff. And I'm really curious to hear more about your thoughts on UFOs and AI, and to have more discussion. So if you have some additional time in the future, I would love to talk with you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for your gracious presence and for inviting me.
And thank you for your brilliant work and spirit in the world. Much respect. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye for now, Dr. Kujawa.